So, how are we doing? Are we frustrated yet? I think hearing from all of our clients and other business owners in New South Wales, yes, we are frustrated. Very frustrated with the New South Wales government support packages, more so with the process behind how you actually apply and the difficulties being encountered by business and I guess the lack of clarity around the application process and the guidelines and getting inconsistent messaging when you are ringing. So has the situation improved? We're happy to say it has. Has it improved to the level that we want? No, it hasn't. But let's look at some of the improvements. And the main one comes around this look at alternate circumstances. So if you look at the business grant, which is the original grant funding that was or assistance that was available for COVID under the New South Wales support package, looked at a very narrow time period of eligibility. So we were looking at a 3-week period beginning the 26th of June for 3 weeks, and you had to choose a minimum 2-week period in there to compare your turnover. Now that threw up a whole host of issues because it was not really reflective of the actual business environment that you're working in. So for some people, we were comparing to 2019. Now we had the situation of businesses not having started in 2019. We had businesses that have grown rapidly since that period, and we had businesses where their 2019 income was actually affected by natural disasters. So there are a whole host of reasons that were coming up with this degree of unfairness, I guess, is one way of saying it. The whole system seemed to be quite unfair. Now, we were told that alternate circumstances would be applied, but when you went to the application process, if you could get on, and originally, and they have improved the capabilities of the system since that point, you were told basically that unless you met those strict criteria, you had to ring the number. What we found with people were ringing the number, and after a long wait in the queue, they were being told, no, you have to go back to the form. Now, fortunately, the form was being updated, and we can see now that it's taking into account more alternate testing. And so looking at things like when you weren't operating for the full year for 2020, because that affects the turnover testing as well. So turnover 75,000 being a threshold for the business grant and being under 75,000 for the micro grant. So if you weren't trading for the full 2020 financial year, that affected your turnover eligibility criteria. So also looking at when your comparative period in that June-July crossover from 2019 is not a reflection of your normal trading. Now, that could easily be the case if you started your business after July 2019, or you've grown rapidly since then. So there are some alternate circumstances in place. Now, so how do they actually work? So we've got some alternatives here available now, and if you didn't have figures from 2019, yes, there are some alternatives available. You can provide a quarterly activity statement to demonstrate your turnover so that you meet that eligibility criteria of being between $75,000 and $50 million. And that's annual turnovers. Now, in turnover, they're talking about GST turnover. So if you use cash for GST, that's the method you use. If you use accruals for GST, you use accruals. Also talking about this concept called aggregated turnover, and this applies where you have a group. So you may have one business and a director or a shareholder of that business also owns another business, so we have to aggregate turnover, and that can be a little bit complex. So if that situation applies to you, ask your accountant or reach out to us and for an explanation there. So we're also looking at some other ways to show that your business was impacted. So if you didn't operate for that full 2019-2020 financial year, you won't have the figures from June, July to do that comparison or to show that decline in turnover. So what you can do is you need to pick a comparable period, a comparable 2-week period during the first 3 quarters of the 2020-21 financial year. So that's from 1 July 2020 through to 31 March 2021, you can choose a 2-week period that is comparable to normal trading for you to use as a benchmark for working out whether you've had that decline in turnover. Now, another way is if you were affected by a natural disaster in 2019 and the figures don't reflect, or 2019, 2020, and the turnover figures aren't representative of your usual turnover, you're going to have a much lower base to be testing your decline in turnover against. So they've brought in an alternative there. So what you need to do is, again, look at a comparable period, okay? A comparable period in that first 3 quarters of the 2020-2021 financial year. So if those periods, though, were not normal business trading, so let's say June, July 2019, and that can happen for a number of reasons. If that's not a reflection of your normal turnover, then you can use a comparable period in the June, July 2018 period, if that is reflective, or if that's your normal turnover. So going back yet another year, so you've got to have your financial records in place. Or again, you can use a comparable period during the first 3 quarters of the 2021 financial year. Now, the application form has been updated and includes capabilities for that. So you will still need to get your accountant's letter in place to support that statement in the application. Now, why is it important to demonstrate this 30% decline in turnover? It is important because even if you think that the value of the grant doesn't warrant the effort, other things flow on from that. So we mentioned the JobSaver eligibility is dependent on you meeting that decline in turnover. The other area is if you're in payroll tax territory and you are paying payroll tax, the deferral of payroll tax is available for everybody, but the waiver is only available if you meet that the 30% reduction in turnover eligibility. So there are a couple of other reasons why you want to do that. Now, it's a bit easy. There are some other questions in the application to deal with impacted industries, and if you go to Service New South Wales website, they actually list what those industries are, and it includes the construction industries, particularly who were told to cease operations during that 2-week period, among many other industries that were severely impacted as well. And don't forget that if you were in the New South Wales border area or southern border area with Victoria, that testing period was also extended for you there. So one of the other things that's flowing out of this that we're seeing is rent and commercial rents, and we're being asked a lot of questions about what do I need to do to go to my landlord and say I can't pay the rent. Can we come to some arrangement? Now, there is a form that is available that you need to complete and supply those details whenever you are making that kind of representation, arguing that you would like a reduction in rent based on your turnover and that you meet the criteria for the 30% reduction in turnover, you meet the criteria for the grant, and you're actually in receipt of the grant. So that's a form there. Now, there is some an enactment from that's been put in place, and the Small Business Commissioner has come out and made this a bit more public knowledge, is that a commercial landlord is prevented from taking action to lock you out of the premises or to evict you during the period if you are eligible for that grant, without undertaking mediation first. Now, we're going to put a link up about what the Small Business Commissioner has in place there and the actual legislation that's put in place to protect commercial tenants during this period of lockdown. So there's a few updates there. If you've got any questions, reach out to us, put them in the comments below, or reach out to us via our website at www.pretiumsolutions.com.au. And as always, if there are still things that are unresolved, please be patient, keep asking the question. We keep lobbying the government through the Institute of Chartered Accountants, or Chartered Accountants Australia, and we're continually putting questions to them about circumstances that haven't already been addressed, and there's still a large number of issues that haven't been correctly addressed or suitably addressed by Service New South Wales and the New South Wales Government in terms of eligibility and alternative testing for meeting the criteria for these grants. So keep hanging in there, stay strong. Now, it is a tough time. it's a tough time for business, and there are a number of tools available. And my friend and colleague Bruce Gleeson from Jones Partners has provided some really good value, very useful steps and process of what to do during this situation when your business is in crisis, impacted by what's going on around you through COVID, or even when it's another situation and you run into a bit of trouble. Now, Bruce has offered his time, and we've created an interview on our podcast, which is the Business Behind Your Business podcast. And this particular episode with Bruce will be released on Tuesday, and there'll be a link put in the comment section below, so you can access that directly, or you can go back and check out some of Bruce's previous interviews with me on the Business Behind Your Business, where Bruce also gives some good quality advice for businesses in crisis. So I'm Paul Sweeney. Hang in there, keep persisting with your business. We will get through this, and reach out if you have any questions.